You are listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Good evening, folks. Yeah, it's Friday, the end of the week already. This is Scotty Roberts, and you're listening to my program, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com, where you can go hear all the goodness that is Odyssey Radio. You can also, for this broadcast, come on over to my simulcast over on my YouTube video. And you can see at my channel, this video, simulcast there. I think I said that twice already. This video simulcast of my show. That's what I get for just talking off the top of my head. I don't have a script. I say this stuff every day, and you'd think it would be consistent from day to day, but it's not. So it's Friday. So come on over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts, if you want to see this broadcast simulcast in video. And also join, I think the greatest feature of the YouTube channel is you can join the chat room. You can join it yourself, throw in your 2 cents worth, see what everybody's talking about, and join the Intrepid family over there. There, whoo, got through that. Okay, it's Friday, it's the end of the week. So I'm pumped because it's the end of the week, but I'm also at the end of the week. You know how it goes. So tonight, I think we're going to wrap up this little series on the Jinn, unless something wild and crazy happens over the weekend, and I think I need to talk about the Jinn again on Monday. But I want to finish this story about the Jinn in Oman, and then I also want to talk about, should we fear the Jinn, or are they afraid of us? I have gone to some sources which some of you, politically speaking, might have a problem with. I've gone to some Arabic or Islamic source points to find out what they have to say about the Jinn. Now keep in mind, my view on Islam is that Islam, when it is taken to a political, radicalized, terroristic extreme by the handful that do that and that govern that, that's a bad thing. That's where I built up some of my prejudices and my bigotry against Islam in general. But I remember back prior to that, prior to the time of all the terrorism coming out of the Middle East, coming out of Islamic states, that I didn't have that kind of a prejudice against Islam. It was another religion. So those who set it up to be something like the religious right in our own country, Western Christianity, that would like to have a theocracy in this country, I'm against that. And so let's take our political thinking about Islam and put it aside for a minute and look at Islam as it really is meant to be by the followers of Islam, those who have come up out of the Dark Ages, those who still believe in the basic tenets of their faith, and Jinn being part of some of the structure of what they believe spiritually, supernaturally. I thought it would be good for us to take a look tonight at what the Muslim answers are to some of the questions that people have posed in their forums about should I be afraid of a Jinn. We'll take a look at that in the second part of the show tonight, and I think it's going to be very interesting. You'll see some very interesting answers coming out of that. But for tonight, the first half, let's continue on with the story we started yesterday. Remember, it was Mohammed El-Hanai who was talking to the author of this particular article about the area behind his house in his village of Bahal. I think it was Bahal. I'll find it here as we're looking through. And he was talking about the weird green lights and the green flames, and how a pale woman in rags stood atop his wispy cedar tree just before the blaze, who vanished as quickly as it appeared, and that their village was having all kinds of incidents like this that they were seeing. And this seems to be a hot spot, a hotbed for Jinn activity in Oman. And El-Hanai, when they went back into the house to conduct the interview, he quickly shut all his doors and windows and locked them all down. Because outside, hidden among the endless sand and the shrub, the evil demons that plagued the desert town of Bala, Oman, are almost certainly listening. is what he said. So he's a devout Muslim. He attended the country's premier university. He raised 5 children. He worked as a supervisor at a factory 20 miles down the road. Al-Hanai is not delusional. He's not a whack job, nor is he alone in this disturbing experience. Stories about confrontations with malicious spirits in Bala and rampant speculation as to why they intrude so frequently there abound within that tight-knit community and have spilled out into the rest of the country. Now, it's like, and I'll mention again when I mentioned at John and Maria's site, the Egyptian worker who saw a Jinn in the hills around the Nile and came running back to the boat, and he and all the rest of the Egyptian workers left the grounds for the day, went down into the hold of the boat, and smoked shisha the rest of the day and all night, and wouldn't come off the boat the rest of the day because one of them saw a Jinn. The belief is very strong. Today, now, in this man's story, it was around Friday, around Maghrib prayer time, or so it'd be around 4:30 or 5 o'clock. This is when the evil Jinn are most active in Bala. Al-Hanai declares while the sunlight fades and he draws tight the blinds in his sitting room, everyone here, he says, had an experience with them. He continues in a lower voice so the Jinn might not hear. But with so many regular Jinn encounters in this village, the community is divided over what to do about the spirits. Whether indeed anything at all can be done, or even whether they should be acknowledged in the first place, like the darkest desert darkness that settles each night over this sandy little outpost. Here in Bala, the burden of the Jinn is very real. It kind of, in very current, I was watching a part of a new episode of Ghost Adventures last night, watching it on my computer, and it was all about somebody who they believed was demon-possessed. I did not see the whole thing, so I didn't follow through on the whole thing, but it was a very frightfully realistic case. And they said it not only affected this particular house where they got the call, but the neighbors were saying they had some of the same activity in their house. So you want to talk about neighborhoods and things like this, it's not only in the Middle East. It happens here in the United States. And this was in a small community somewhere. I can't even remember where it was. I think it was Texas or something like that. So it happens here, even with the demonic. If you get a chance to watch that episode, take a look at it. It's a little frightening. And from what I've heard, and I will say this, I rather support and like the Ghost Adventures show. You might think Zach Baggins can be a little off the wall sometimes. I think his cohorts are pretty common sense. And I have heard from other people who have worked closely with them that they are very serious about what they do. And so I don't think it's a fake show, which some skeptics who've never watched it or have watched an episode will brush it off. So it might be fun to watch. Fun in the sense that it's entertaining, but at the same time, it's got some pretty interesting information. So now, belief in the spirits, beings in one form or another, from the wailing banshees of Irish mythology to the corpse-eating Jikiniki, Jikinki, Jikininki, ghosts of Japan. Oh, there he goes, Japanese. See, I didn't even know that in my notes. The Jikininki, ghosts of Japanese Buddhist lore. They transcend geography. The same with the fairy folk, the banshees of the Irish. They transcend geography. They transcend faith and ethnicity. Nor are these beliefs simply relegated to bygone eras. In 2013, a nationwide Harris poll found, now this is just 7 years ago, a nationwide Harris poll found that in addition to the 2/3 of Americans who believe in angels, over a quarter believe in witches, and nearly half believe in ghosts. Now, I don't know how they're defining witches in that Harris poll. I know a lot of witches, probably dozens of them if I were to count them out by name. But they're pagan. They are Wiccan. They are not the green-faced They're green-skinned warts on their nose, wearing pointy hats, types of witches of fairy tales. They are witches, and remember, witches can, there's even in the Bible, in the Old Testament, where it says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," which was kind of a hinge-pin verse during the Salem witch trials and things like, "Do not suffer a witch to live." Well, it's a mistranslation as well. First of all, the Bible says, do not, if you were to interpret it properly from the Hebrew, do not allow a witch to live amongst you in your community. But the word witch is one translated word that stands for 7 different kinds of witches, going from all the way from the evil sorcerers who cast spells to do harm on people, all the way down to the herbalist who mixes herbs and creates potions for the sick to help heal people. So what the verse is actually saying, it's in the Bible, it's using the most extreme version. It's saying, do not allow a witch who practices evil sorcery to do harm to people live amongst you in your villages. That's the actual amplified. We were talking a little bit about the King James Version the other day, and I know I'm on a rabbit trail, and I'll get off it in a second, about the King James Version and how the beauty of the prose and the literary of Shakespearean English when it was written, 1611. So the King James Version will say, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Well, that's great. And somebody said they don't like the amplified versions. Yet if you go into the Hebrew and you amplify the words, you find out what the words actually mean. It doesn't just say, "Don't let a witch live among you," or don't allow a witch to live." The amplified understanding of the words in their context, in the language they were written, means do not allow an evil sorcerer who does spells to harm people live amongst you in your communities. So there you go. Off rabbit trail now. So it says that 1/4 of people in America believe in witches and nearly half believe in ghosts. So among Muslims, the second largest religious group in the world, belief in spirit beings is very common, and descriptions of them are particularly vivid in Islamic texts. Even the Hebrew texts, the ancient Israeli texts, speak of beings that we no longer hear very much about. There were all kinds of spirit beings that governed the spirit world. And the Quran tells the story of the birth of the Jinn. They were supernatural creatures of, as you remember, we talked about this already, of smokeless fire is how they were created, in opposition to the angels. And angels created of light, humans created of the dust of the ground, Jinn created of smokeless fire. And while further verses in the Hadith, collections of quotes attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, simply supplement the Holy Book of Islam on these topics, and they lay out further details of the origins and the principles of the Jinn. And these texts present an unsettling picture of Jinn. They're extremely powerful beings. They're made in the eyes of God or Allah, alongside human. This is just another name for God. It's just the Muslim name for God. Alongside humans, but with a proclivity for following the evil lead of Iblis, a haughty jinn, later known as Satan. He refused to bow to the superiority of Adam, the first man, and subsequently vowed to lead all humans astray. And the jinn also enjoy lurking in the dark and the unclean places. And Islamic doctrine even offers a supplication to ward off these foul spirits, specifically for when entering shadowy or impure places like that. Like that story we read about the jinn in the mud and the muck of human debris and human waste coming from the sewer. In the name of God, I take refuge with you from all evil and evildoers. In Islam. So comprehensive polling suggested belief in the jinn is substantial across the Muslim world. Recent studies in Morocco, Pakistan, and the Islamic diaspora in the United Kingdom place the rate of belief in jinn above 80% of the people among adherents of Islam. And in theocracies like Saudi Arabia, the jinn even regularly make the news for brushes with the law. In one 2009 court case, a Medina family tried to take a jinn to court for harassment, claiming the jinn had evicted them from their home. And while rich oral histories of the jinn encounters exist as far west as Casablanca, it is in Arabia where many of these tales often spawned. This is where it started. And keep in mind, too, tales of the jinn predated Islam. They were just incorporated into Islam. When Muhammad really created Islam, created Allah, let me make a note on that. Allah did not exist before Muhammad created him and named him. And by creating, I don't mean magically created him. Out of whole cloth, he took the 290 deities that the Arabic tribes worshipped, and he said we must have monotheism in order to coalesce, to unite our tribes. And he got rid of 289 of them and elevated the chief god to the position of the God and renamed him Allah. And it's similar to what Moses did with Jehovah. And so let's move on. The Arabian Peninsula is the heartland of the jinn, and as the birthplace of Islam, the focal point of many jinn legends and beliefs. This is the scholar Robert Lebling in his book Legends of the Fire Spirits, Jinn and Genies from Arabia to Zanzibar. But why is this little town, this little outpost town in Oman of Balaa, a nowhere town over 1,000 miles east of Islam's epicenter, so affected by the jinn? Like jinn concealed in shadow, the clues are cloaked deep in the annals of its unique history. Hemmed in by a vast mountain range to the north and dizzying expanses of open desert to the south, Balaa initially looks like one of many towns, strung together like beads along the winding road, carved into Oman's sleepy interior. But one imposing structure makes Balaa stand out among the country's chain of inland settlements. The 12th century mud brick fort that looms over the town, 12th century, casting shadows over the market square that sits near its base. From this medieval Islamic stronghold, the area's dominant tribe, the Banu Niban, ruled for 3 centuries in the center of Ibadism, used the dominant school of Islam in Oman, to the present day emerged, as did stories of the evil jinn. I'm going to see, while we're talking, I am going to get you a little image of the little town and this 1,200-year-old tower. Let me save this image as we're talking. It talks about how the jinn live in the shadowy places. I'm going to name this Bahal. And save that. Let me see if I can, and those of you on the radio, of course you're not going to be able to see this, but let me throw a picture up here of this little town so you can make kind of a mental visual image. I like visuals, and this is why I do the video as well. But let's find this here. I'm going to throw this up for you right now, so watch your screens. This is the little town we're talking about, where these occurrences have taken place and where this story is focused. Let's see, it should be, it didn't save properly, so let me try that again. I'm saving this image as, I know this is scintillating live radio, but here we go. We'll call it bahal.jpg. There you go. Let's see if this will work for us this time. Let's see. You have used the extension JPEG. Use it. All right, let's try this again. Let's see if we can get a picture up here for you. And this, of course, is the town and the little outpost, the ancient outpost that's there, where they say that the Jinn reside. Now, let's see if it comes up for us here. There it is. Okay. There you go. Now, you should see this on your screen. Let me enlarge that. All right. That right there is the ancient tower, and you can see the mountains to the one side, to the north of the city. And this ancient tower is the place where they are saying that all of this is taking place. And Bahal was the center of military, religion, and politics in that age, says Abdul Fattah al-Humari. There you go. And he's a historian who worked in the Bala fort during its meticulous 25-year restoration process from 1987 to 2012. And while sitting under its mighty mud brick tower, rising 155 feet in the air, and powerful, he said, and powerful people attracted powerful jinn. He admits and he recalls the stories of ancient Balawi generals who were potent enough to stand atop the fort and command the jinn. But Bala's residents needed more than just inspiring figures, and for everyone else in town, success in the harsh medieval desert required tangible protection, which came in from the 14 kilometers of impressive walls built in the 15th century to encircle the city, and walls meant real safety and became an integral part of local lore, affecting the town's perception of outsiders and spirits, even into modernity. And outside the walls meant danger. Stories circulated around town of Bedouin who would come into the walls and kidnap people, take them to Dubai or Saudi Arabia, and sell them like goats, as well as evil spirits that ate dogs and cannibalized humans. And this is Madonna Limbert. She's an associate professor of anthropology at CUNY Queens. In her book on Bahal or Bala in the 1970s. Even now, Balawis continue to relay origin stories rooted in suspicion and distrust for 3 ancient mosques, now reduced to ruins, sitting just outside the town's walls. And the stories our grandfathers told us were that they were old Sufi mosques, says one 70-year-old Bala resident over a cup of tea in the town square. Some stories said that the mosques just flew in and landed there one day. Some also said that the Sufis were banished from their own town because of their collaboration with Jinn, and they brought Jinn here, he concludes. And though tales of Jinn may have existed in the region, even before the Bala fort, the word ghoul is the cognate of gull, G-U-L, a monster found in pre-Islamic Arabian storytelling, and whether or not stories of ruthless, cannibalizing spirits or mysterious Sufi outsiders in Bala harbor or kernels of truth, their place is certainly deeply rooted in the town's the town's own mythology. And so, Bala, there it is. There's the tower. And this is where these stories grow up. Now, I'm not quite through this account, probably because I rabbit trailed a bit. So we'll pick this up and finish this account of Oman, the town of Bala, when we come back. So sit tight for a couple of minutes. We'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Thanks for sitting through that break. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network, and you are watching the simulcast in video over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Come on over and join the Intrepid family and join the chat room that's going on live right now as this show is going on. And you can share your 2 cents worth or enjoy the presence there of the Intrepid family. So let's move on. Let's get back into this story of the town of Bahal and of the Jinn in Oman. Now, we ended with talking how the stories kind of got started there about the tower and so on. Now, today, stories of Jinn sightings in Bala still range from I keep saying Bahal. I'm sorry about that. Bala, B-A-H-L-A, Bala, Oman. And they still range from disquieting to downright bone-chilling tales. The author who wrote an article about this little town said that he sat with one family that woke each week to a low moaning outside the house. And each week they would find strange mounds of rock and sand meticulously piled directly underneath the window of their infant son's room. A group of farmers told him of the Jinn that they had heard haunting the palm oasis, dotting the palm trees dotting town. There you go. Preying on them after dusk by calling their names across the valley until they are dangerously lost and bitterly cold. But outright possession of these malevolent spirits is much more terrifying than these fleeting encounters. And you see, yesterday we talked a bit about possession, and I said I don't believe you can be from the overwhelming number of responses I found on that, but you're still going to have other camps and other trains of thought that say you can be possessed by these creatures, by the Jinn. And so apparently in Bala, they say that they have fleeting encounters that do have possession, include possession. And if the acute physical afflictions are unnerving, one middle-aged man blew directly into my ears to convey the sensation that he had felt rattling through his skull for months. The mental consequences and personality changes are categorically disturbing, says the author. Another man said, I found my brother some nights muttering against a wall, muttering unintelligible words. That was one man's claims of his 30-year-old sibling. Now, is this mental illness or is this something else? In the oldest section of Bala's downtown souk area, which it looks like something out of a movie, by the way. Think Casablanca, think the desert dirt roads and the mud brick buildings and structures. This is what the downtown of Bala, their souk area, souk meaning the marketplace. The shopkeepers fretfully point out 2 spots where spirits are believed to have entered humans. An old stoop near a tea shop that they adamantly insist must be avoided, and a leafy tree casting shadows over the market's main square. But others maintain when a heart doesn't properly recognize the power of God, the soul becomes susceptible to Jinn possession. Many people acquire Jinn when they start sentences and actions without first saying Bismillah in the name of God, or when giving a compliment without first saying, mashallah, or God has willed it, mashallah. We said that a lot in Egypt. If God wills it, that was almost a common, end of a statement. Like the Canadians would say, you need to hear mashallah, in God's will. And that's Muhammad El-Wardi, who is a former shopkeeper who now spends his days reading the Quran within the market. But it's the course of treatment after someone has been possessed by Jinn that's truly the most delicate topic in town. As one young resident put it, with Jinn, there is a fine line between Islam and something completely different. And exorcisms start to cross into that something else territory. And he pauses, searching for the right word, something else even darker than Jinn. And like Christianity and other religions that harbor beliefs in non-human spirits, Islam has its own traditions in exorcism. But in Oman, another exorcising ritual known as Zar, Z-A-R, also exists. And in the academic journal Mental Health, Religion and Culture, Dr. Samir Al-Alwadi, a psychiatrist and a researcher at Oman's Sultan Qaboos University, Qaboos, Qaboos University, describes the mechanics of a Zar exorcism. It goes like this. The essence of the ritual is to coerce the spirit to possess the medium so that it reveals why it has possessed that particular person. The shaman will lure his own Zar spirit to possess him or her. The shaman is then used to lure the unknown Zar spirit of the possessed person. The client or the mabtala, possessed or afflicted one, wears special dresses for the occasion and often fasts until the ceremony ends. The shaman is sometimes also a trained singer who knows the songs and the rhythms of each particular spirit. As he or she sings each spirit's song and watches for a reaction, he or she is able to diagnose which type of spirit has taken possession of the person and how to exorcise it. I would think that'd be an interesting process to observe, watching a shaman sing different songs to see which song brings a reaction in the afflicted person. So in Bala, concerns about Zar revolve around whether its ceremonies and its rituals actually can be classified as an Islamic exorcism, and they run somehow parallel to it, or more worryingly fall into what's called shirk, S-H-I-R-K, shirk, or beliefs that can't be reconciled within the monotheistic framework of Islam. And we find this in Christianity as well. This monotheistic belief can be challenged by other things out there. And so they experience the same in the framework of Islam. And though it's practiced in several Muslim-majority countries, from Egypt to Iran, Zar probably originated in Ethiopia and was brought to the Muslim world by Ethiopian slaves. Much like when you think how our own slave caste in the early parts of the colonies in the 1600s. Remember even the story of Salem, Massachusetts, and the witch trials. There was Tituba, was the black slave who brought voodoo with her and those beliefs. And so sometimes they're saying the Ethiopian slaves brought them to Egypt and other countries. But in Oman, Zar was transferred via Zanzibari slaves during the mid-19th century, when large territories of East Africa were controlled by Oman. And this tie to Zanzibar alone is problematic for some Omanis. Like America, Oman has quite a history of race and culture tension, slavery, oppression between the races, with people whose ancestors were slaves. This is what Sayyid al-Ismaili, an Omani educator who proclaims 2 decades of experience communicating with Jinn. Some Omanis see Zanzibari heritage in Oman as foreign, and then they don't trust it. But people within the community of Zar practitioners are quick to espouse the ceremony's inherently Islamic soul. I have heard stories. People think Zar means eating hot coals, performing sex rituals in the desert, or human blood sacrifices, everything, says Harib al-Shukali, a Zar exorcist who estimates that he has treated over 5,000 patients during his 2-decade-long practice, mostly from Bala and the surrounding area. Now, are all 5,000 of those actual possession cases? Can they be other illnesses that people believe are brought on by the evil spirits or by the Jinn? Yes, I think they can be. But he's treated over 5,000 people, he says. And he says, we only want to activate evils inside the human body and free people from them. This is Islamic, he said. So what they do is they kind of activate the demon to act so they can locate it and eradicate it through their rituals. And to bolster his point, al-Shukali grabs his young apprentice son. Zar shamans' skills are often passed down through the generations. And to relay one of their most desperate, hopeless cases, a man and a woman who came for treatment after losing 11 children before the age of 3. But after an exorcism where al-Shukali claims he wrestled the spirit of a jinn from the wife's body, the couple now have 3 children, all of them healthy and approaching their teens. The only sacrifice for them was a small zakat, an Islamic charity offering. And al-Shukali's son says, we did what was Islam. So they claim that they were able to cast these spirits out, and the couple was able to have children after that. Now, al-Shukali is especially licensed by some of the stories, I'm sorry, I misread that, is incensed, not licensed, by some of the stories of spirits he hears around town by people who look down on Zanzibari jinn beliefs and practices. Some Omanis say that they see dead relatives walking around the market and then disappearing. This is not in Islam. This is only ghost stories, he says, tossing an amulet back and forth between his hands. But in the end, this is all Jinn, he says, looking up to the sky as another sunset darkens the town square. They want to tear us apart, the Jinn, our minds, our communities, with arguments, disbelief, everything. And all of the time, the Jinn are still here, waiting. And this is the burden of Bala. So that is the Jinn in Oman, in this small town of Bala. I have another photo here that I want to show you. This is the tree in the center of town. This is the heart of downtown Bala, Oman. And I want to show you what first of all, what downtown Bala looks like, and also one of the places where they say, in the shade of this tree is where the Jinn can be found. And so you don't go sit under that tree unless you've done your prayers, you've done your incantations, you've done all of these things. We're going to find that in some of the things we're going to look at next about how Islam handles this. Now look at this. I'll blow this picture up a bit. This is the market square in Bala. And you can see the shops, and way down through the drive-through here, you can see some shops over on the street in the next block. But this is the way, when you're in Egypt and you go into the small villages, this is what you find. And this is the tree in Bala that is supposed to be the tree where you will find the Jinn waiting or hiding in the shadows. And you must do certain things to prevent them from affecting you. So there you go. And those of you on the radio, sorry, you can't see that. All right, we got about 12 minutes left here, and I want to go through some of the things that I found, and I've got all kinds of information in front of me here about fear of the Jinn. When does fear of harm caused by the Jinn or by the people constitute shirk, meaning the things that are outside of Islam. And the answer came back, and this is from an Islamic question and answer board. It is shirk to be afraid of human criminals, or of the jinn, or of entering deserted places. These are all questions. Is it shirk to say that so-and-so causes harm, meaning that he hits or punches and so on? Is it shirk to say that this thing is harmful to one's health? And the answer came back, praise be to Allah. Firstly, being afraid of harm caused by evildoers such as human criminals comes under the heading of natural innate fear, for which there is a known cause, which fear is of their harm and evil. So one takes action to protect oneself against that by keeping away from them and avoiding them. This kind of fear is not regarded as shirk. Rather, no one would be blamed for that unless it prompts him to do something haram, or, that is illegal, so to speak, by the religious dictates of Islam, haram. And let's see, natural and innate fear is permissible in principle, because Allah, may he be exalted, says of Musa, the interpretation of the meaning, so he left it, the city, fearful and anticipating apprehension. And that's in the Al-Qasas 28:21. And he tells us that Musa said, interpretation of the meaning, my Lord, indeed I killed from among them someone, and I fear they will kill me. But if fear prompts a person to neglect an obligatory duty or something haram, then it is haram. If it prompts him to do something permissible, then it's permissible. And this was talking about Musa, about Moses, when he killed the Egyptian and fled, because he feared for his life. Fear of the jinn is subject to further discussion. If it's natural fear, like a person's fear of anything could do harm, such as wild animals and snakes, then this is an innate fear, like that referred to above, and the person is not to be blamed for that, so long as it does not prompt him to commit any haram action. But he should seek to ward off that fear by prescribed means, such as remembering Allah, or God, may he be exalted, calling upon him and putting his trust in him. But if it is fear that results from false beliefs, such as if he believes that the jinn can harm or benefit people independently of Allah, then this constitutes shirk. What is required in this case is to correct his belief. The scholars call this kind of fear khawf al-sir, or literally fear of the hidden, fearing something other than Allah, may he be exalted, lest it do him harm of its own volition and power, even if that is indirectly. And this constitutes shirk akbar, major shirk, because it is believing that something other than Allah has the power to bring benefit or cause harm, and so on. And that explanation goes on. I looked at some other fear of the jinn, and I looked up several different places where we can find this question is being answered. And I found one that I thought, in particular, is very in-depth on the jinn, and we're not going to get into that, because that would take more time than we have, and recap a lot of the material we've shown here. But fear of the jinn Sheikh, the Rabbi, and this is by the Salafi Center of Manchester, England. And Aqidah, the creed and belief, the devour, calling to Islam, methodology, monotheism, morals and manners, akhlaq, refutations, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right for my Muslim listeners, seeking knowledge and worship, or the ibadah. And so the question comes here. Does fearing the jinn enter into natural fear or not? And the answer comes back, and it's slightly lengthy, but not too long. Fearing the jinn, if it is inner fear, and if it's believed that the jinn can benefit and harm you, then this enters into shirk. And verily there were men among mankind who took shelter with the masculine among the jinn, but the jinn, increased them, mankind, in sin and disbelief. That's a surah, Al-Jinn, verse 6. And in the most part, cases, fear of the jinn, and Allah knows best, falls into the fear that is regarded to be worship, because it's believed that by way of the jinn you can be harmed and benefited, whilst no one has the ability to cause harm or benefit except Allah, neither the jinn nor the people, as the messenger of Allah, Sallallahu Alohai, I don't know how to pronounce it, I don't even know what it means and what the context is here, Wa Salam said, know that if the notion, or the nation, were to gather together to benefit you with something, they would not benefit with anything except that which Allah has already recorded for you. Recorded. If they gather to harm you by something, they would not be able to harm you by anything except what Allah has already recorded against you. And that was by Tirmidhi Hassan Sahih. And the true believer, now we're talking about Islam here, the true believer does not fear anyone or anything except Allah. And that fear of Allah, I think, is probably in the same context as we say Jews and Christians fear God, the fear of God. And so the mighty and majestic Allah, it says here. So fear them not, but fear me, if indeed you are true believers. And that's Ali Imran, verse 175. And so, meaning the inner fear, the fear that is regarded to be worship. As for the fear of a snake, a lion, or a corrupt person, meaning he who attacks you and you are not able to resist or fight him, then it is natural fear, and it does not harm. This does not harm you, insha Allah, and it has no effect on the Aqidah. Now, some of these words, I don't know what they are. They are common words that are being used for Muslims. Now, I don't know. Insha Allah, he says. I know that inshallah was always in God's will too. Allah being part of the word, and we said that a lot of times. Inshallah. So, however, fear of jinn in most cases is a fear established upon corrupt beliefs. The messenger, and so on, was salam, has given you weapons and has taught you. Read Awatai Kursi. Some of this is meaningless because we don't know what it means, and I didn't study all these little terms out. But this is their prescription for the fear. If you have fear of the jinn, that you read the scriptures, that you pray, that you use the means which will protect you from them, from every type of harm, from snakes, scorpions, and from others other than them. So it's saying you use the same recitings in order to dispel the fear. And I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah from the evil that He has created. So recite 3 times in the evening. You recite that. I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah from the evil of what He has created. Or you could take that into the Christian realm and say, I seek refuge in God, the perfect words of God, and from the things He created that might do evil to me. And so if you said this, nothing will come to you of harm, neither a jinn nor a snake, nor other than them. Nothing will harm you by permission of Allah. And this is when it is done with sincerity and truthfulness. May Allah bless you all. So these are some readings from Islam, some answers from Islam on how they answer religiously, theologically. And if you're Islamic out there and you're listening to some of what I'm saying, you go, no, you're saying that all wrong. I might be, because I'm not that familiar with all the aspects of some of the words used and the prayers used and the scriptures and so on. But these are things that are said. Basically, Islam says you should not have fear of the jinn. You should only have fear of God, of Allah, because it's only He who allows them to do harm to you. Now, that is, of course, within the theological structure of Islam. Now, you go to Christianity, and you're going to hear the same type of answers. You shouldn't fear anything other than what God has ordained you should be fearful of. And you put your trust in God, say your prayers with sincerity, and you should not live with fear. This is what Christianity teaches. This is what Judaism teaches. And so with the we got about a minute or two left here, and we're going to be done with this broadcast. So let's kind of wrap this up. We talked about Islam. We talked about the things, the questions and answers about should we fear Jinn? Do Jinn possess us? Are they beings that can do us harm? And I think yes, to some of that, they are beings that we see can do us harm. They are beings who can do great evil, but they are also beings who crave human attention. And that attention, this was something that we saw with demonology and with angelology, is that these beings sometimes crave our attention, and they go out of their way to get us to pay attention to them. Ghosts crave our attention at times. Sometimes they do things, move things, make things happen around you so that specifically it draws your attention and you notice them. So the Jinn are the same, and I think there are ways to test the waters. And I think probably the best way, because some of you have said, oh my, because we think about them, are we manifesting them? Not necessarily. I think if you dwell on it and you want to draw them in, and you might be able to manifest their presence, but you also might be creating that presence. So it's okay to, I think, study, to know what's out there, to know what's there. I think if you are religious or spiritual, you have your own ways, either within a corporate structure of religious faith to ward off attention from these spirits, or you could probably open yourself wide up to question, like a shaman, like the shaman did, Wesselman, and ask them questions. So I'm going to leave the Jinn at that. Unless you've got a lot of questions that come to me over the weekend and we address them on Monday, this will be it for the Jinn for now. So thank you for listening tonight. Thanks for listening this whole week. It's been an interesting week of learning some things I didn't know an awful lot about. And so go on, have a good weekend. See you Sunday morning on my YouTube channel for It's Sunday at 9 a.m. Central Standard, 10 a.m. East Coast, 7 a.m. out on the left coast. Have a good weekend, folks. See you later.